Remember when we used to talk about the paperless office?
E-commerce?
Signing a contract on paper.
And even giving out an agent's pager number?
We're in a mobile world.
We're in a mobile world, and your business needs to be too.
It's a digital world.
Workflow is changing, and so too are our experiences.
There are over 350 prop tech players right now
Competing for the space.
How do you keep up with it all? And what's next?
Welcome to Founders.
A new podcast with Josh Phegan
On the future of workflow in real estate.
Welcome to Founders, the podcast. And today we've got an incredible edition where we're going to talk to Jason and Juri from Core Studios and what it really takes to be a great real estate agent when it comes to marketing. And marketing is a great positioning tool. They also call it one of the great perception tools of what you can go to create. And it's a lot more than what agents actually think about, because some of the best content that you've actually got is incredible property, but also to you as an agent. And we're living in a minefield, and you guys are going to help me with this, where I've got real estate agents who are like, Josh, I don't want to do video. And I'm like, why don't you want to do video? And they're like, because I'm ugly in the video. And I say to them, well, it's no different in real life. But that foundational idea, it's a joke, is to stir you is to start to think about, can you actually do videos without the agent having to be in the video? If you are wanting to learn how to be good in video, what does that look like? So we're going to have the whole conversation about really understanding lots of different things about how you become across and being really authentic in the way that you got to work with people, a conversation around how you go to lead an industry, working out what are good trends that you can be getting on top of to make sure that you're more creative in the way you got to present, the types of content that you can be putting out there and how you can produce that content, from property content to market-based content to things that are happening inside of your agency, and really understanding the importance of being able to lean into a provider that can actually do things like be a one-stop shop for you, so that there's one group of people that are there, whether or not it be photos and floor plans or videos, that everything's done in a really short period of time and allowing the magic to happen through creativity. And this is a really important foundational concept to understand what we're doing in the digital age and the diversity of the type of work that your creatives need to be doing to make sure they stay creative and not get bored with what it is that they're doing, but also to going back to good old school relationship to really make business work. I'm really looking forward to this one, so we're going to jump straight in. Juri, tell us a little bit about the story about Core Studios. Where did you guys begin and how's it got to now?
So Core Studios started up in 2011. So we've been nearly running for 14 years now. And, we started out of a little basement of myself and Jace and, didn't really know our way around a camera. And we, had a few friends in the real estate world and we thought, geez, this would be, a fun gig to do full time. So, we ended up buying some cameras and giving it a crack. And, 14 years later, we've got a team of over 40 people and creating some of Sydney's best content.
Yeah, this is amazing because, Juri, when you start to have a quick look at that and you start thinking about what's actually going on, it's really important to understand it's more than just the photos now, right?
100%.
And tell us a little bit about that story, because if you start to think about agents are like, and I was in a listing presentation recently and someone said to me, we don't do video. It doesn't really work. And I was like, where have you been? Because we're starting to see the evolution of mobile phones, and like the iPhone's like going to be up at number 17 shortly if they don't change the naming convention. So it starts to get you to realize that literally it's more that agents have got to learn how to go to do content and how to be really valuable around that space, right?
Well, content's king at the moment. We've seen that we've actually seen the change. Maybe 6-7 years ago, videos, maybe some agencies or some agents were maybe doing one video a month, and then we actually started to see the progression, a little bit earlier, and we knew where it was headed.
Yeah, I think if there was no budget for particular things, video would be the first thing that gets cut. Whereas now it's the first thing that gets booked in, because they've got all these platforms that they're going to put them out onto. So it's in their best interest to get the videos done.
And when we started, we were just only doing photography, and we could see a little bit of a hole in the market. So that's what, eventually we added on the videography, and then, the content creation, content management. Now it's the ultimate one-stop shop, which I think works really well for agents. When we, like I said before, we rock up to a home, there's 5-6 of us, you've got the photographer, floor plan, copywriter, videographer. And, if someone's, especially if the agent's interacting with the photographer at the time, the videographer's catching all that content, which can be used as well. So it's not just your cliche, just shooting a house. It's the behind the scenes. It's how the agent interacts with the vendors and with his team and so forth. So
that's a great conversation. Jason, for me, I'm always thinking about like positioning of an agent, and I'm thinking about how you can really position, you can make a brand really come alive in the way that it looks and the way that it sounds. And people say that that's really funny, but yet, one of the most famous in our industry is a guy by the name of Gavin Rubinstein. And when you think about Gav, he's got a really simple line. I think it's "Welcome home," and you hear that he now owns that audio soundbite. So when you hear that, I know it's instantly him. And this is a really interesting thing about understanding that literally there's styling, there's the conversation around what you're doing as a brand, there's the feel, there's the positioning. And when you start to think about it, well, let's have a look at the 3 specific core lines. You think, okay, great, you've got photography. That needs to look incredible. So you need to absolutely capture the emotion and what's actually going on in that property, and as well as special features that you know that someone would pay more money because of that particular feature. The secondary conversation is video. Video is more than just capturing that. It's beyond. It's actually selling the lifestyle that comes with that particular property. It's being able to get people to deeply engage of how that looks at daytime, nighttime, dusk, all of those things. And actually really getting them to a point that go, you know what, I would love to live there, even if that's just aspirational. And then the next conversation is then thinking about what we do in the social environment to make sure the right audience is seeing that, because that's not only building up a great list of buyers, but also too, it's actually finding you a great list of sellers and people that actually would refer you out in marketplace because they go, that person is seriously good. How important is it for agents to think about photos, video, and social? So starting to think about the content that you're creating and then making sure that content is getting to the right audience for it to be highly effective.
Look, I think it's super important. I mean, obviously, the photography is probably the most obvious one that they need to showcase the home to potential buyers. But now with so many platforms that they can put videos up, even the warts and all videos kind of work really well because they show that authenticity. They also show the property off. But I think it resonates well with the audiences. So I think it is super important for agents to definitely explore each of those elements. I guess they all bring something different to the table, but they're all important as well.
And this is kind of an interesting conversation because about learning how you want to be positioned. And I was doing some training with an agency up in Brisbane recently, and I said to him, hey, here are some options. Would you like to be in the video? Yes, no. And a lady said to me, is there an option for me not to be in a video? And I was like, yes. Believe it or not,
a lot.
Steven Spielberg, I've never met him, but I know his work. So Steven Spielberg presents Jurassic Park. Josh Phegan presents 123 Smith Street. So the iconology, the stylization, the way that you actually position that home, it is actually possible that if you don't want to be in the video, you don't have to be. There's other agents that are very clearly in the video for the whole thing, walking you through the house. But this is about when someone's actually sitting down with you, let's actually build out your strategy first on what you want and then go to producing the content. And often I find it's kind of the other way. We produce some content, but there's no real strategy behind it.
Correct.
And that's why you need someone to actually get in here and to go to help that out. Now, this is an interesting one. Jason, when we talk about authentic, like vision and the values sit inside the organization, tell us a little about that journey and how that's led to being able to build this incredible business.
Well, I think one thing that we pride ourselves on is the relationships that we have with our clients. So we spend a lot of time with our clients outside of work. They're friends now. We know their kids. We go to their kids' birthday parties. We've been to weddings. So that, for us, just kind of solidifies the fact that we, do a pretty good job of kind of creating
We're part of the family.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that side of things. For me, the social element of going to shoot someone's home with an agent there that I know and I've got a good relationship with, I love that. And it's something we try to instill in the team as well. We've got a photographer who loves golf and an agent that loves golf. They're golfing on the weekend. And I think that's such a cool little kind of, you're not just going to work, basically. It goes
You're seeing some of them 3-4 times a week sometimes.
Yeah.
You see them more than your family sometimes.
Pretty much. Yeah.
When it comes to being a values-led organisation, that's really important. So you're clear about what you stand for and what you don't stand for. Give us a bit of an idea about some of the values that have been important, in the Core Studios journey.
Okay, definitely thinking big.
Yes.
So not just pigeonholing ourselves to real estate even. And going back to Core Photography's name, we didn't want to call ourselves Core Real Estate Photography because we never wanted to pigeonhole ourselves, even back in 2011. So I like to think that we're still continuing that vibe and always kind of
Pushing forward.
Yeah, pushing forward and keeping on track of trends.
And to me, that's really important because the diversity of the work keeps the creativity there.
Yes.
So you're getting exposure to different styles, to different shoot locations, to different lighting, to different things that you've got in terms of talent. Waiting on sound. You're making sure that you've actually got everything the way that it should be.
Yeah.
Those values are actually really helping you to really make sure that you're getting the best people in the business.
100%. And I think it also helps helps. Obviously, the team, there's 40 odd of us now, so they're all quite diverse and they all have different interests outside of real estate. So now we've got people that like shooting cars, so they're shooting cars together on the weekends. So it's definitely something that we all keep front and center so that we can.
Yeah, a lot of creatives are a lot of them are multi-skilled, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of them started out shooting weddings and then some do food photography. So a lot of them are actually new to the real estate world, and it is hard to recruit good talent for the creative realm. It really, we find that, you know, the best people are usually the ones that, you know, are best at problem solving, you know, figuring things out, you know, going on YouTube, and they're the ones, usually majority of the people that we hire don't have a lot of real estate experience. It's kind of
which we kind of prefer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they see it from a different angle. And I think, like, you know, we saw some really big corporates come into the space in Australia that were trying to, you know, make it very cookie cutter approach. And they were like, oh, this is this, and here's your 7-second reel, and then this is this. And then the problem with that is that, like, everything started to feel so boring and tired. And I can't remember the name of it, but, you know, the pan, when they used to just pan across the image. And it was like a style that Apple did once, and then everyone replicated it forever.
Yeah.
And so you just got to start to realize, and this I think is important about trendsetter. You know, it makes me think of that lyric from that song, trendsetter, jet setter. But, like, why is it important to be setting trends here and exploring new ways that you got to present a property and how you got to present the story about that home?
Well, I think in such a competitive market like Sydney, people do want to stand out from the competition. So if you're providing a little bit of extra knowledge in terms of, guys, why don't we try this? Or even the fashion world is doing this at the moment. And we've seen trends kind of trickle into real estate that have been big in the fashion world. So we, as a team, tend to look outside of what's happening in real estate and see what trends we can bring in to our realm.
And this is a big one too, because if you had have told me that I'd be suggesting 5 videos on a property literally 6 months ago, I would have told you that you're crazy. And now I'm like, well, Josh, you're way behind the times, because we've got the video which is going to make it to the websites and the major portals. But now we've got, like, for example, 4 8 to 15 second reels, which could be things like launching soon, open this weekend, auction this week, now sold. And I'm also then thinking about the technology, and this is a bit different, but Amazon says, hey, people who like this also buy this. So if you missed out on Smith Street, come and have a look at Jones Street. So learning how to really be able to bring along those audiences on other campaigns to new campaigns, you know, once that particular campaign has been sold. And so if you start thinking about that, that thinking big is a really important part. Tell us a little about that, Juri, about, like, the conversation why an agent has got to maybe think bigger than where they're at. Because I meet some agents who say, hey, I don't want to be on social. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. In the new world of how things like ChatGPT and Claude and others, Graca, are searching, if you go into deep research and you say, hey, who's the best real estate agent in this location, then it will then go and search, like, a whole heap of websites and come back with you with a recommendation. And when you have a look at the search results, it's looking at lots of things about what's actually happening on social, what's happening in the rating and reviews websites, what's happening on the major portals. And if you don't have digital content in that environment, you're actually a chance of not actually coming up in those search results. And if you're not even in, as my dad would say, in the yellow pages, then you're not even going to get called in.
True.
And so this is why it's a really important part. When you start to think about that, thinking big, does an agent need to evolve their thinking about saying, hey, I've got to get better at packaging and selling my vendor paid marketing and include video and social on the schedules and learn how to position that? Because what I've got to think about now is that the technology is click on a link, go to a website follows you on social. And I still have to explain to my family and friends, why is that weird thing following you on Instagram? No, I'm not looking at a boat. But all of a sudden it keeps on turning up.
Well, personal branding is so important, you know, especially like Gav, for example. You think TRG, you think Gav, you know, you think
Oliver Lavers.
Exactly right. So it is very, very important. And especially, I think, you know, there's a stat out there that's 54% of people will Google research you before, you know, buying your product or going to a restaurant. So, you know, 54% of the time people are looking at you online to see if you've got a presence, to see what you've sold and see, you know, seeing how you perform.
Have you guys seen the AI Crystal Knows? No. So what you actually do is you type in someone's name, and Crystal Knows then goes against LinkedIn and then actually then profiles you as a person and tells you how to sell to that person.
Wow.
And it's like, it's insane. So
doesn't sound invasive at all.
No, not at all. One of my friends has got a wife called Crystal. I'm like, mate, she always knew, but that basic idea. So when you're thinking a little bit about this is important to understand that the world is changing, and the easiest way to get ahead of the algorithm is to make sure the algorithm likes the sort of stuff that you do, which is why the trends are really important. That literally, if I did an 8 to 15 second video versus a 2-minute video, that 8 to 15 second video is going to get, like, I don't know, 10 times, 100 times more views, because we're living in a society now where I don't think anyone can watch a long film.
No.
And so like we're probably at the last Mission Impossible, not only because he's retired, but the basic idea is I'm not sure we've got the attention span to go to do that.
That's right. And hearing, song trends that are, key, and again, 10 to 15 seconds is probably key.
I thought you were going a bit long there.
Yeah.
But that's one thing our socials team, they spend a lot of time doing, focusing on what is trending at the moment, what's up and coming, what's working, what's not working. Something that worked last week isn't working this week anymore.
We're constantly testing it too with our own socials. Sometimes we create these awesome reels and then, our social team will be like, yeah, that didn't work as good as we hoped.
This week you have to shoot it on a phone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, done.
Okay, cool, thanks. And so this is interesting to understand content types. So Jason, you want to talk to me a little bit about that because I tend to think about, real estate can be quite rigid, that we've got like a brand content, we've got like an agency content. Sometimes we might have an office content if that's sitting inside of a franchise. Then we've got agent content, and then we've then got things like market updates. Then we've got like real live action stuff that's happening, opens and auctions and results, and then community stuff when we're at the fair and, the school fates and some of that sort of stuff. And then you've then got what we've got to call that whole property suite around, a property that's coming to market, a property that's been listed, a property that's been sold, and nothing that has happened yet as far as I'm aware. But I just don't get why someone hasn't done a really good before and after show, similar to The Block in the way they go to produce their socials. But you've got to do that after the property's sold because the buyer doesn't want to see the reno before they buy. But,
sure.
But thinking about that. So tell us a little bit about content types and how people have got to discover and explore what's going to suit them and their marketplace and how they want to be presented.
Well, I think taking it right back is that relationship that we have with our client. We often, we've had a few clients that we know really well and they've pushed back on video, but we've seen that they've got a good personality, a good sense of humor. So we're like, you can do this. Like, trust me, just be yourself and you'll be fine. So I think that's the first step in almost leaning into what they're comfortable with and what comes naturally to them, because that'll resonate the best from our experience. So that's one thing we try and tailor first, figure out, okay, maybe this person doesn't want to kind of do a walkthrough, but they're happy to just do a little intro with maybe show a little bit of personality, just basically tailor it to them and then work on from that, if that makes sense.
So do you do training like how to glide the fingers across the bench? No.
Yes, I've got a 6-week extensive course on that.
Do we make sure the nails are done before you do that?
100%, yeah.
I saw a profile photo of an agent the other day and there's a chip nail. I'm like, I actually saw that. But that basic idea here is attention to detail.
Yes.
And that's what I really like is about like how do you actually want to be presented. But here is the thing. If you're listening to today's podcast and going, you know what, I actually don't have a plan and what I've just been doing is been doing what was on my schedule, get 6 photos, get a video and move on. You're missing a trick here because this is really about understanding how you go to package and how you go to present not only you, but also to the properties that you represent. And if you want to get known for something, and I think that like there's a really interesting thing, it's starting to happen in commercial real estate where commercial is like, no one would watch a video. No one's on Instagram who's going to buy a $21 million shed. Turns out they are.
Yeah.
And the foundational idea is that what people are learning in that commercial world is that they are so far behind what's actually happening at the forefront of residential. Now, there's a lot of resi that have got to catch up as well, but commercial's still way back in here's the fax machine and let me send you the IM. not quite that bad, but it kind of feels like that. Founders is brought to you by Josh Phegan Digital. When we were setting out to go and create Josh Phegan Digital, we just had this whole idea that we wanted training to be on demand. And everything in our life is on demand. We just press play inside of the Netflix app. We press play on YouTube, play on Spotify. Why couldn't we just press play on training? And what we decided is we want to be like super relevant to real estate agents so that in under a couple of minutes each day, if you wanted to, you could upskill and you could grow in new ways. And so we decided that we were going to release this thing that we called The Edit, which is basically the latest in property news stories that's happening every week right the way around the country. So you could be incredibly sharp in your conversations with sellers. And then we built out the short courses, which was all about rapidly building skills, whether or not it's about learning how to get better fees or to put on an assistant. And then we actually wanted to give you access to blueprints so you didn't have to wait for it every year. You could just watch it whenever you wanted and actually go from zero to hero around everything that it takes, from goal setting, self and energy management, what you're doing around prospecting, listing, negotiation, and actually just have a system for the way that you work. Together with, getting really inspired by some of the best people in the industry with the black and white interviews. Josh Phegan Digital is available on iOS and also on Android. It's an incredible app and it gives you everything that you'll need to be a much better agent. It's time to switch on. So when you start to think about this, is important to understand that often, like, some people have a bit of a fragmentation. So they have someone who does a bit of social, and they've got like a floor plan guy that they've always used, and then they've got like a photographer that they really like, but the photographer doesn't do video that well, but they don't want to upset that photography relationship. And then that's so important because they've been taking photos for them for 20 years, but then they want to do the video thing, and it's like the time on this sort of stuff is potentially one of the biggest issues that I've got. So when I work with an agent who does a high volume of transactions, so like, 50, 100, even up to 200 transactions a year, they don't have time to spend 8 hours on a shoot. And we're hearing of brands and agents that are doing that. Do you want to talk a little bit to that point about why it's so important to try to get that done, not only from the vendor's perspective in terms of convenience, but also too from an agent's perspective, and knowing that literally the agent might not need to be there for the whole time, and they can trust the individuals that are here that are representing the brand of the agent on behalf of them inside of the Core Studios mechanism, that they're more than capable to understand the importance of expensive things that are in a house and looking after a house as though it was your own, and taking your shoes off and doing all of those things that are, I know that sounds really trivial, but really important
super
to get
important.
it right.
Yeah. Look, I think just going back to the kind of bits and pieces from everywhere, that is what we were aiming for in terms of the one-stop shop. Agents have enough going on. They don't need to be calling 9 people to get one photo shoot done. So that's definitely where that idea came from. But in terms of being on site, I think we pride ourselves on being really respectful of the fact that we're in someone's home, and we go in as a team with the agent. It's not,
and we also understand that you're putting on a show. We're representing the agent. We're representing ourselves.
Correct.
So and it's one of the biggest decisions an owner's got to make. Some people haven't sold in 30 years. I had one yesterday. She hadn't sold in 30 years. She's freaking out.
and they're often very stressed as well.
Yeah, and sometimes we play a bit of a we've got to play therapist, and
Which I don't mind.
But here's the funny thing about it, is that I always say to an agent, when you're listing a property, what does the sale represent for the seller? So sometimes they're really happy and excited. They're having a baby. They've got a job relocation. Things are going really well. Sometimes we're walking into some very traumatic situations. 100%. The loss of a loved one, someone having to move into a nursing home, an unexpected divorce. Geez, you went with that pretty quick. But that basic idea. But knowing that literally, and I think that there was William Garuda, I think it is, the guy who did Unhospitality, the book, and he said that he was talking about this story where there's these 2 people that are there, and they're in this restaurant in Madison Square. So he's got like the highest ranking restaurant in the world at this point. And there's this 21-year-old with her mum and dad, and they're celebrating her 21st, and they're having a champagne because you can legally drink at that age in America. And then all of a sudden, like over here is actually someone, and there's this lady who's on her own, and as he goes to take her order, this tear comes out of her eye. And he's trying to, hoping that she's okay. And anyway, she's not really opening up to him. And by the time he gets to the end of the dinner, she finally reveals to him as the waiter that literally she had buried her husband 3 weeks ago. And so this is her first time ever in going out to go and have a meal on her own. And so he tells the story that in hospitality, you can be celebrating some of the greatest moments of someone's life and swinging the champagne. And at the other end of the stick, you can also be helping someone and giving them a little bit of light in their greatest moment of need.
Yeah.
And that really gets me to think of like the power of emotion. And when you think about, what video is doing and how you're positioning in photography, how your profile photo looks as an agent. I know it's so basic, but like literally if you still have hair in the photo shoot, then there's probably a problem for you and I. Not for you, although I think you've been to Turkey. But that basic idea is it gets you to start to think differently about what it is that you're doing. And so this is like literally, packaging is really important. Now, we talk a little bit about, and Juri, maybe we'll go to you on this one, about the magic that actually comes in bringing these things together, because you often will watch some of these films. I like to call them films, and then you see some of the short form video content that comes out. You see some of the photos, and I'm like, I'm going to have to marry really well to afford that, but geez, it's nice. How important is it when you think about the magic in creating something and delivering a product that literally people go, hey, I really want to buy that, and then helping that buyer to pay more when it comes to auction day?
Well, I think, Jason, myself, and especially our team, we train ourselves in a way, you're not just trying to take photos of every room. You also got to think from a marketing angle. If I take this shot, is this going to show too much neighbor? If I take this shot, is it going to make the room look too small? So the old school days was just take every room, but it is being tactical because, that's the first thing they say online, and the aim of the game is to get the, people through the door. So I think sometimes people, I think, can, want to do 15 photos for a home, but maybe sometimes Jason, I'll be like, hey, I think this probably deserves about 8 to 10. I don't think we need to overshow it. So I think working in the best interests of the vendors and the owners and the vendors and the agents, helping them out and being a bit more tactical when we're on site. And then again, putting that show on, reading the room. Sometimes you'll get a vendor who says, "Can you just take a photo of my kid's room? I love it. I painted the bed and all this." And you're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Well, I think we're always reminded that they're going to be keepsakes for them. So once they leave that home that they've spent 30 years in,
they're going to look at the memories. They want to see your photos. So it is working with them. And again, reading that room, it's crucial to it.
What's really coming through to me though is like the tailoring mechanism, because when digital photography first came out, and I remember we were the first ever in regional Australia where I was an agent, and we had a 360 camera. I don't know if you know what that was. And we used to go in and I used to have to set it up.
They were very fancy.
Then I had to set the timer on a minute and run out of the room and let it do its thing. And then I had to stitch it together so that you could do the full 360. And if I got it out of whack, there was
very
a weird
COVID times.
Yes, this is 1999,
they've been resurgence.
But different to the 360 you're thinking of. I actually had this one and this little disc spun around. Anyway, long story short, what I worked out very, very quickly is that we were doing that. And then when I first came to Sydney, people were like, it's 5 photos per property. And I was like, what? We used to do 40 in the country. And now I'm seeing people in the city are like, oh no, we do 30 photos now, 10 years later, those evolved. But what I love about it here is that you're actually really tailoring it. Say, hey, what does this property actually really need right now to attract the maximum audience, to get people in the car, to go to the physical open for inspection and make an offer? And this is the interesting thing. They say that actually on the Porsche website, the 911 actually has a 30-minute video. Now, who would watch a 30-minute video? Someone who's about to spend a ridiculous amount of money on a two-door car. So from that point of view, I think it's really important, though, that they know their target market. So it's not for you or I, but it's for the person who wants to buy that. Now, to that person, they say that literally when they walk into the dealership, they're already walking in with what they want. I want it in this color with that color and that brake caliber and blah, 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 blah. And it's the same thing. If you actually stand out the front of an Apple store, you will watch people walk in, and back in the days when we were still using cash, or back in the days when we were still using credit card, they would have the credit card out. They were ready to do the transaction.
They weren't there to browse.
And so what you're doing is you're shortening the consumer decision-making cycle. And that's actually what you've got to consider. So I said to people the other day, hey, here's a really basic idea. I went to a beautiful home in Balmain that was available for sale, and the agent rang me and she was really keen to get me down and have a look at it. So I went down and she gave me a brochure. Now, okay, great. That's fantastic. I got the brochure. You know what happens with the brochure? It goes in my car.
Yeah.
People then in my car, oh, are you buying that house? Oh, no, I'm just looking. Why are you looking? And so that starts in, and then the brochure makes it into my house. And then friends are coming around. They're like, oh, are you getting a new house? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just looking. Oh, really? And then what the agent did, which was super smart, is that then they then sent me an e-brochure after I'd been to the open home. So automation, so it sends me a link to the property again. Now, what do I do with the link? I forward it on to my friend Con. I forward it on to my mum and dad. And then you wouldn't believe it, because they click on the link, they go to the website technology automatically puts it in their socials. My mum 5 days later goes, have you bought that house yet? I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, it keeps coming up in my socials. And so what I'm actually understanding is that this is the difference between advertising and marketing, is really understanding how consumers work and how do you get inside of their influence circle.
Yep.
So the influencers in their life, their mum, their dad, their brother, their sister, their work colleague, their best friends, are also seeing that content to then go, oh, hey, you know what, that's actually the house you should buy. And I definitely think that you should do that. And I think that that's where the big opportunity's got to be here, is to actually get that right, because you'll make a huge difference. And a lot of people don't understand that if you don't actually explain it to them in that way. But now that I've shared that story with you, you're like, oh, that's how they got me in the loop of doom. Because
that's right.
and also too, sometimes I think that you will click on content and you'll watch and you'll follow for a period of time until you buy that product or service, and then potentially you'll unfollow. Now, I know that this is kind of scary for agents because they always want to build their follow account, right? Or they really just want to build their number of email subscribers. But I'm saying, hey guys, have a look at this. This is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I'll tell you the story anyway. So, there was the Theragun, which was this massage gun that came out. And I'm a runner. So I was like, oh, this is cool. So I can massage my leg after I've been for a big run and, whatever. And then I followed them on Instagram and I started watching all the content, and then I bought one. And then 6 weeks later, I was like, why am I watching someone massage themselves on Instagram? So I unfollowed. But what the video content did really well is it shortened the decision-making cycle. I didn't have to go to a retail store. I bought it online and I still use it today. So from that point of view, is it actually okay for people to unfollow you? And is it actually okay for people to follow you? And I think that if you're here's my list of opens every Saturday, you've missed the boat because you're not actually thinking that this is like that beautiful collection of amazing real estate that might be aspirational one day, or it might be something that today is the day. And what we're doing is we're helping to build a brand and an image and a profile and a positioning statement about you and an agent.
Yep.
So that when someone is a seller or a buyer, or they're helping to influence someone who's selling or buying, they go, oh yeah, use Josh, he's great. And you know, I think that this is that whole conversation that, like, with video content, when people then see you and then they see you in the street, and the number of times I've walked down the street, someone's like, oh, g'day, Josh Phegan Digital. I'm like, what? My name's actually Josh. But the whole key thing is they've seen that, and that's actually a really amazing thing, and that you can travel the world and know that someone's always watching you, but just understanding how that positions. Diversity is important. Relationship is critical. When you go to think about it, I always say that, hey, I don't really believe in actually having someone as a service provider. I actually really believe in having a partner who works with me.
A growth partner, as we like to call it.
And tell us a bit more about that. Like, the growth partner is designed to actually help you to get better and to grow your business and to reposition you, right?
Yeah, well, I find even, obviously, we try and push ourselves as much as possible, but we also have clients pushing us as well, which helps us get to that next point. So obviously, as that relationship strengthens and you get to know each other, you can kind of lean into that a little bit and help each other grow. And then the more time you spend, if we're doing all your services for you, your socials, your videos, your photos, we know what you want. So we're almost we can see all the elements, so we can kind of help go in that direction. So,
and there's even those times when, you know, you're on site and you're like, this is the shot. And he's like, oh, I don't know about that. And you're like, just trust me. We're taking this shot. All right.
We'll give it to you for free. Just take it.
Yeah, just take it. No, I can't say how many times. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, you look on Instagram, it's the leading shot on the cover. And you're like, there you go. So,
but it's very much a team effort.
It is,
we never want to go in there and think, no, we're the photographers or the videographers. You're the agent, you sit down type thing. That's not how we operate.
And you do see that, unfortunately, I think that with the creative element is that sometimes it can come with moodiness.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, you've been to a lot of jobs, you've been underappreciated. No one ever says thank you. No one ever says, hey, that got us a really good thing. Or no one ever says, hey, here's a little bonus of like just a little gift voucher. Or, you know, I'll get you a coffee to say thanks very much for doing that. Like, it's the little things that makes a big difference. And I would say that literally this is probably one of, if not the most important relationships for an agent to get right, that the person who's shooting their content, whether or not it be photography or video, that's helping them with the strategy on their social in a digital world that we live in. This is important because it's like they are packaging and they are marketing you, and they're going to do more than probably respectfully what the brand people will do, because you guys are living and breathing the brand.
And we want to create amazing content because, you know, if that goes viral, people are asking, hey, Josh, who does your content? You can say, hey, Core Studios does it, you know? So we want to be producing amazing stuff, original stuff, you know, exciting stuff, or, you know, whatever.
And we are more often than not know that person beyond just work kind of relationship. So we want to like help that person even more.
A lot of agents, I feel, suffer from imposter syndrome. Yes. They see Gav, they see Ollie, and they're such naturals at, you know, getting on the camera. But, you know, it took them a bit of time just to get that comfortable. And, you know, Ollie Leves can come into a shoot, do it in 10, 15 minutes, and he's out. And it doesn't overthink it, but then you get agents who want to do it, and they're like, oh, I don't want to look like a real estate agent. Well, mate, you are a real estate agent, you know? And then, you know what? Eventually they give it a go. And it's like, that's all it is. A lot of these guys want to do it, but I think they're just, you know, they just got to be, like Jason said before, as long as they're authentic, be themselves. The majority of these high-performing real estate agents can control a room, can have a good conversation. So, you know, all it takes is a few practice runs, and I think that's all they need sometimes, you know. And they do the amount of times we hear it, I just don't know if I could do it. And you're like, mate, you're a natural. You don't stop talking 15 minutes. You'd be fine, you know. Yeah. So
alcohol tends to make it a lot easier.
This is not a brand endorsement. Okay, so this is really amazing. If someone had a great property or an agency, or they were an agent and they were looking for advice and guidance, which markets do you service today, and are you going to tell us about the future?
Well, at the moment we're Sydney-wide.
But where does Sydney-wide go as far as, does it take me to walk down Newcastle, or are we just on the edges?
It depends on the client.
Okay, that's a good answer.
We've done stuff in Bowral. It really depends. You know, listen, and
geographically not the most convenient location for us, but we make it work if we have to.
So Sydney surrounds is your major, and when it comes to the social content side of stuff, still Sydney based, because you also go in and do a whole heap of content. Like I was talking with one of my clients who's using you now on the social stuff, and he goes, mate, it's unbelievable. I said, what's that? He goes, in 2 weeks' time, we've got like a content day and they're coming to shoot a whole range of things for our content strategy. He goes, like, I used to have a lot of people that just want to do my social stuff, but they never wanted to help in the actual production of the content. So they're bringing a team in and the photos and the videos and all that stuff that's going to go on. And so I'm watching that with like unbelievable levels of interest. So no pressure. But it's awesome because like they're a really good client and they do amazing work and they happen to have like circa 70% market share in their core market, but they want to get better.
Yeah.
And I love that literally they're still aspirational and ambitious. They're not taking that market leading position for granted.
Correct.
And they're saying, hey, how do we use creativity in a really powerful way? So if someone wanted to get into contact, how do they do that with Core and how do they start that conversation?
You can log on to our website. There is a section there.
The website address is
www.corestudios.au.
Yes.
We just changed it, so I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, corestudios.au. Look, we've got a contact number, email, whatever. We get WhatsApp.
There's an inquiry form on there.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Send a fax if you want, whatever you like.
And the great conversation is that you've got a really lovely team of people that are around there, a high level of customer service orientation and experience, which is what I loved as well, because when I said, hey guys, I'd love to do some work with you, it's really interesting that like the level of detail and the conversations that have gone in to really make you feel really confident and comfortable, but yet at the same time too, to establish ambition and to actually help you to become the type of agent you want to be. It's a really phenomenal story. So congratulations on literally making it to the big time on some of the most incredible creativity that we're seeing in the real estate space.
Thanks, Josh.
But also too, staying really humble about what it is that you're doing, because you can tell why people would love to work with you. You've got great energy and great passion for the product, but also to understanding, hey, this is actually really a big business that's built on relationships and it's one person by one, and it's not about quantity, but the quality of what it is that we're doing. And you might not be for everyone, and that's actually okay.
Yeah,
because there are other people that want to be the cookie cutter for everyone, and this is actually really about establishing identity and building a brand that will last multiple generations, because of the way that you're doing content is actually going to be keeping up and ahead of the times and giving you the creativity options on what you can do to be able to reposition yourself as an agent. Awesome to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having us,
Josh. Appreciate it.